How can someone who lived so far away in a distant, not so distant reality have their finger on the pulse of humanity's most profound existential dilemmas? Welcome to the reading room. As I opened this door for the first time, my choice was obvious. Being such an influence in my development both as a writer and a human, I headed, without hesitation, to meet my good friend from Off-World, Philip K. Dick. There's much more to say about him than I can cover in this video, but let's focus on some aspects of his work, and feel free to leave your comments, questions, and suggestions for a potential future video. As is the case with many other readers, the first time I heard the calling of the Off-World universe was through Blade Runner, which I only discovered late in life. In my teens, when I wanted to kill some time between classes, I picked up a VHS copy at my school library. Yes, there used to be such a thing, and sat down to watch. But the beginning of the movie didn't pull me in at the time. Little did I know. When I did pick it up again years later, I can truly say I was forever lost in its dystopian beauty. This experience with Blade Runner perfectly illustrates the experience of reading K. Dick's work. An immersive journey into refreshingly new yet familiar realities, so complex that they challenge the very notion of being purely fictional, merely the product of a man's rich imagination. Many will feel, as I do, that the author doesn't really write as if he's crafting imaginary worlds, but almost as if he's recounting what he's actually witnessing as a man living in this other reality, and implicitly inviting us to come visit. Thankfully, this first-hand observer of fantastic alternate realities had a masterful command of the English language. Clearly seduced by the intrinsic technological, scientific, and societal disparities between that world and this one, he was still able to expertly and seemingly effortlessly capture the poetry and humanity in a scene, a moment, or an exchange between two characters. But in order to fully enjoy these mesmerizing places and thrilling situations, the reader must learn to decode the author's imagination, and this is no easy feat. Because he lived so profoundly embedded in these realities, the narrative is written with a familiarity that dismisses the need for explanation. Some readers, like myself, will be motivated by the challenge, while others may find themselves helplessly trapped in labyrinthic plots and subplots. Don't despair though. Some pages may take a second or third read, but the outcome is truly a worthy one. Here's an example I often use to illustrate this. Imagine that you are writing a book set in the present time, and in the first paragraph you write, "As soon as he noticed the light change, John immediately dropped his cell phone, put his foot on the gas, nearly missing a pedestrian on the crosswalk, and made a sharp right, distancing himself from the angry honks of the quickly shrinking cars in the rearview mirror." Without further explanation, we can all envision this scene to its very last detail. However, take that first paragraph, get in your time machine, and go back to, say, 1850. Once there, gather an audience and share with them what you wrote. How many of them would understand what they've read? Now put yourself in that audience's shoes. Naturally, you would need more information to fully grasp the events of that first paragraph. But because the author didn't feel the need to give more information, being so familiar with its elements, you'll have to keep reading and either infer the rest from context or piece information together from details sprinkled here and there. Welcome to your first journey to the Off-World universe. I had that exact same feeling in my first experience with the 3 Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch. If you're unfamiliar with the book, here's a good synopsis from Goodreads. In the overcrowded world and cramped space colonies of the late 21st century, tedium can be endured through the drug CAN-D, which enables users to inhabit a shared illusory world. When industrialist Palmer Eldritch returns from an interstellar trip, he brings with him a new drug, Chu-Z. It is far more potent than CAN-D, but threatens to plunge the world into a permanent state of drug delusion, controlled by the mysterious Eldritch. Intrigued? So was I, and to this day I cannot be certain that what I read wasn't in fact a documentary or at least a fictional story based on true events. You think that's a crazy notion, don't you? Well then, here's an idea. How many of us at some point in our lives, tumbling down some intellectual rabbit hole, came to question the reality of reality? How many of us would be willing to bet our own lives on the certainty that what we're experiencing every day isn't in fact an elaborate simulation made possible by some uber-advanced technology? The only difference between this scenario and the world of Palmer Eldritch is the trigger. In that case, a drug from another galaxy. But the author goes one step beyond and poses the question, what if the reality you live in wasn't your reality, but the product of someone else's imagination? This goes to the heart of some of Dick's most consistent and profound questions concerning the timeless dilemma of the nature of reality. This conundrum has sparked man's curiosity over millennia, and where once mankind sought to understand its place in the universe through mystical thought, we now rely on science to bring us the answers. Well, Philip K. Dick proposes a new approach, one that commits both science and mystical thought to this dilemma. And in doing so, he produced what is, in my opinion, one of his greatest achievements, a new take on mystical thought, one that's constantly expanding in a universe rife with unexpected paths for knowledge. This sounds superhuman, but despite his superhuman qualities, Philip K. Dick was still bound to the human experience. I mentioned before how, in the midst of such mesmerizing landscapes and events, he was still able to not lose sight of a moment's poetry and humanity. And so, let me share with you some moments that, in my opinion, give those who've just landed in some mysterious off-world port a glimpse into Philip K. Dick's not-so-distant reality. So let's pick up Ubik, one of Dick's most famous books. And the back cover of the edition that I'm holding in my hand right now, a short synopsis reads the following. Ubik crosses the boundaries of life, death, and reality with the story of Glenn Runsiter. He is dead. Or is he? As reality warps for those he left behind, nothing is certain anymore. Quite an enticing little read, isn't it? And once you open the book, you are faced with yet another conundrum, and it reads, I am Ubik. Before the universe was, I am. I made the suns. I made the worlds. I created the lives and the places they inhabit. I move them here, I put them there. They go as I say, then do as I tell them. I am the word, and my name is never spoken, the name which no one knows. I am called Ubik, but that is not my name. I am. I shall always be. Now, this is quite the entry to this book. And as you read further along, you are faced with this exchange between two characters. Now, I'm going to be careful to not spoil it for you, and I'm not going to mention which one says this. And it reads as follows. Perhaps your definition of your self-system lacks authentic boundaries. You've erected a precarious structure of personality on unconscious factors over which you have no control. That's why you feel threatened by me. There's a lot to unpack in that little paragraph, so I'll just let you do that by yourselves, and feel free to tell me what you found in the comments below. And now here's a final entry from this book, one that I think clearly illustrates what I mentioned before about Dick's ability to capture a moment's poetry and humanity. It did not seem possible that Wendy Wright had been born out of blood and internal organs like other people. In proximity to her, he felt himself to be a squat, oily, sweating, uneducated nerd whose stomach rattled and whose breath wheezed. Near her, he became aware of the physical mechanisms which kept him alive. Within him, machinery, pipes and valves and gas compressors and fan belts had to chug away at a losing task, a labor ultimately doomed. Seeing her face, he discovered that his own consisted of a garish mask. Noticing her body made him feel like a low-class wind-up toy. Such a breath of fresh air reading something like that. Now let's put Ubik aside and pick up another one of Dick's most famous books. "Flow my tears," the policeman said. On the back of my edition, the synopsis reads, Jason Taverner is a 6, the product of top-secret government experiments 40 years earlier which produced a handful of unnaturally bright and beautiful people. He's also a TV star, the primetime idol of millions, until, inexplicably, all record of him disappears from the databanks. Now, he's a man with no identity in a police state where everybody's records are monitored. Can he ever be rich and famous again, if indeed those memories are not illusions? And through this main character, the author writes, "Fear," Jason said, "can make you do more wrong than hate or jealousy. If you're afraid, you don't commit yourself to life completely. Fear makes you always hold something back." Very insightful. But Philip K. Dick's most memorable quotes don't come always in the form of a paragraph. Rather, sometimes they're a little sentence lost in the middle of a paragraph, like this one. "Reality denied comes back to haunt." And I'll let you simmer on that one overnight. In the meantime, one final entry in this book, a poem that was the source of inspiration for the title. "Flow, my tears, fall from your springs. Exiled forever, let me mourn. Where night's black bird her sad infamy sings, there let me live forlorn." Would you ever expect to find such beauty in a science fiction novel? I didn't, and I was enthralled. Now, of course, I couldn't finish this episode without getting into Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Probably Dick's most well-known book, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. On the back cover of my edition, a very short synopsis reads the following. Dick's grim vision of a bounty hunter stalking renegade replicants through a devastated future. Although brief, this little sentence does encompass the main points of the plot, but it also fails to capture the complexity of the narrative. So this time, instead of a quote, we'll focus on an example of the extent to which the author's imagination was able to grasp not only humanity's spiritual challenges in a world of ever-expanding complexity, but also its misguided solutions. Allow me to introduce you to Mercerism, a religion followed by the denizens of post-World War terminus Earth. It's centered around a martyr known as Wilbur Mercer. Together, followers would fuse with Mercer through the use of an empathy box, during which they would see Mercer endlessly climbing up a hill whilst he was endlessly pelted by stones. In actuality, Mercerism was manufactured by an unknown party. Mercer's ascent was filmed on a soundstage. Mercer himself was played by Al Jari, while the rocks hurled at him and injuries sustained were fake. There is certainly a level of complexity and realism that's hard to balance, but which, once achieved, leaves readers in absolute awe at the power of one man's imagination to create such vivid fictional reality. And in their bewilderment, they will wonder, is it really fictional? Could it be that this reality exists not far from my own? Because, albeit different, these realities hold a haunting level of familiarity. As many of you know, this book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, was the source for Blade Runner, and what better way to end this show? If you're interested, I can recommend other movie adaptations of Philip K. Dick's work, such as Total Recall, based on We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, and Minority Report, based on The Minority Report. And I almost forgot one of the most ingenious adaptations, A Scanner Darkly, based on A Scanner Darkly. And now on to you, dear listener. Tell me about your encounters and adventures in the off-world universe. Have you ever felt completely lost somewhere out there? And if so, tell me where and how you found your way back to reality, if ever at all. From one lover of mystical things to another, thanks for stopping by today. I hope you enjoyed this first tour of the reading room. Feel free to suggest authors, books, genres, or even characters in the comments section, and share this video with fellow book lovers among family and friends. Oh, and don't be a stranger. You're always welcome at the Den. See you next time.